Shavua Tov, Agute Voch. We'll continue with story number 2 in the Shivchei Baal Shem Tov. And this story has two versions. It is not clear to me the explanation of the second version, but I think, again, my personal understanding, that the first version of the story is as it was provided by the Alter Rebbe to the publisher, to Rabbi Yisrael Yaffe. And the second one, it says, Nusach Aktavim, the version according to the writings. I would understand, although I could be mistaken, that this refers to the version in the handwritten original of Rabbi Dober of Linitz, who actually wrote and compiled these stories. Maybe there is a different explanation of why the two versions, and the Nusach Ktavim refers to something else. And if it's my mistake and somebody knows it, please do point it out to me. The story is called Eitza Lenetzachon B'Milchama, the advice for the victory, for winning the war. Pam Achas Aya HaMelech Eise Milchama Gdola. Once the king of the place where the Baal Shem Tov's father had been taken to, the king was facing a great war. So he called his royal advisor to be called. And from last week's story, I would gather that this royal advisor, the Yoetz Melech, and the great minister are really the same person. He's calling the great minister who, from last week's story, we know had become the owner, the master of a servant, of a slave, who was no other than the Baal Shem Tov's father, who was sold in serfdom, in slavery in this country, after he was kidnapped from his hometown by some army or robbers who attacked the place. And so the king was facing a great war, and he called his royal advisor, his grand minister to come, and he wanted to consult with him what would be the tactic for the war, for the attack, for the defense. And it was hard to understand the real situation. They could not rely on whatever intelligence they had. So it was difficult to decide things, and the king was very frustrated and became upset at the minister because he could not serve him as an advisor in this time of difficulty. So was the Grand Minister greatly frustrated, and he became sad that he couldn't tell the king what to do, for they lacked information. So he went back home. He couldn't handle it. When he came home, Moreinu Harav Eliezer, the Baal Shem Tov's father, came to greet him holding a cup of water and a container where to pour the water into to wash his feet, as was the custom as we described last week. And he sees the long face, the worry face of his master. So he says, Rabbi Eliezer says to him, my master, why the long face? Why such a bad humor? Would you please tell me? But the king's minister simply admonished him and did not tell him. Rabbi Eliezer was a very loyal servant to his master and wanted him to be treated fairly. So he did a lot of things to show his loyalty, and he even put his life in danger for the sake of his master. And a time or two he came back until finally the king's minister, told him what happened. So he tells his master, the solutions to things are held up in heaven, are known to God. God is known, is referred to in scriptures as Ish Milchama, the man of war, the man of war. So, says Rabbi Eliezer, I'm going to do a long fast of more than one day, and I'm going to ask Hashem Yisbarach, God blessed be He, to reveal me the secret of His dinim, of His judgments above, because He is the one who Megale Razin, the one who will reveal all the things that are hidden, all the secrets. So he did a Shailas Chalo, meaning he would ask Hashem, he will consult Hashem to reveal him through a dream. And it was revealed to him the details of the tactics of the war and what would happen, how everything would be, and everything was detailed to him, was revealed to him exactly. The very next day, he went to his master, and he gave the advice that was given to him by Hashem from heaven, and this found grace in the eyes of the king when the king heard this, and he was very happy. When the king hears from his minister, meaning what the Rabbi Eliezer, Baal Shem Tov's father, tells the minister tells the king, and the king is very happy. He said, my master, your majesty, this is the advice I have to give you, and told him everything. And the king heard everything. He was marveled, and he said, this is such a wonderful advice. And there is a quote here, the exact verse in Aramaic from the book of Daniel 2:11. There is no one who could declare to the king except for the gods whose dwelling place is not in the flesh. The verse in Daniel refers to malachim, to angels. So, there is like a divine revelation here. How could you know such things? Or, on the contrary, if this is not from such a holy place, then it comes from the spirit of impurity, from the Ruach HaTumah. Now the king says to his master, to his minister, I know that you are not a holy man, so I think you're a mechashev, you're a toothsayer, you're doing witchcraft. And the minister was afraid to be accused of doing witchcraft, so he had to reveal the truth to the king about who had told him all of this. And so is the first version in the book, and then it says there is another version, and this is the Nusach HaKetavim, the version in the writings. My understanding from the context is this is what it was in the actual writings of Rav Dober of Linitz in the original manuscript. I have not checked this out. This is my understanding. It says the story like this. Once the king was traveling with his soldiers in boat to go to make a battle and conquest a fortress, and as they were coming to it from a distance, it seemed to reduce in size to their eyes, meaning it looked like it was going to be an easy target. So the king, my apologies, summer begins. As the summer begins, my street gets very noisy. Okay, so as they are coming, looks like it's going to be an easy target, and the king says, the day is almost over. This fortress is small. We should spend the night here in the place where they anchor, and we are nearby. Tomorrow, at the break of dawn, we'll go without bothering all the soldiers, just with a small contingent, a small group, and we will go and conquer this place. And so, the above-mentioned Rav, meaning Rav Eliezer, he was also a sailor in one of the boats, and it had been revealed to him in a dream what he must go and tell the king, and he should not take the battle lightly, for if he did so, if he was tricked into thinking this was going to be easy, the king and his army will be lost. So the version here, even though it's the same story, the details are completely differently rendered, right? And here it is that the waters around the city, as they were approaching by sea, had pillars of iron protecting the city. They were under the water, and it would be impossible to attack it by sea. The boats would come, would crash against these pillars of iron, and would crash, and they would turn over, and they would sink. But as it was revealed to Rabbi Eliezer, there was a path. There was a certain signal how to identify there was a path where you could go in and out to the city. And it was also revealed to him what those signals were, so he could lead the fleet of the king through that place to actually attack the city without losing their path, without going into the danger area. The king got up in the morning, fast, with alacrity, happy, and he began waking up the sailors to get together the group that was going to lead the assault. And Rabbi Eliezer refused to go, and he said, I have a private matter, a secret matter that I must address to the king now. He was, they cut his hair and they gave him new clothing, they prepared him to meet the king, and they took him in a small boat, so he was able to meet the king and reveal to him, or give to him what was revealed to him from heaven. And he said to the king, if your majesty does not believe me, the king should send a small contingent of people who are condemned to death, of criminals who are going to be executed anyway, and put them in a boat and see what happens as they are approaching the city, see what will happen to them. And so the king did, and put these men in a boat and sent them toward the city. And when they arrived to the place where the iron pillars were hidden under the waters, they crashed against it, the boat turned over, and they all drowned in the water, and they lost their lives. So the king asked him, what would you advise me to do then? So the Rav, Rabbi Eliezer, the Baal Shem Tov's father, said, there is a path, a straight path, that can go into the city, and the people who dwell there use this to go back and forth. And he showed them the signals how to recognize this path. When they did as Rabbi Eliezer was saying, the king was able to come into the waters of the city and successfully conquer the fortress. And so is the second version of the story. I'm sure there is a deeper meaning to this story, as the actual geographic references are not mentioned. This is one of the questions. Do we take the story literally, or is it a symbolic story, or both? It's a real story with a symbolic meaning. I shall discuss it in my Patreon page, and those who wish to collaborate, I'll appreciate. All the rest of you, if you can watch, already did by now I'm sure, share, like, and subscribe, I'll appreciate, and I'll be back next week for the next story in this first section of stories about the Baal Shem Tov's father, Rabbi Eliezer. Shavua Tov, a gute Woche.